Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. So today we are continuing our unit here on citizenship and government. Today we're going to talk more about immigration, but specifically the details of what that process is. If somebody comes to the United States from another country, how do they become a citizen of the United States? What's that process like? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I think it's pretty eye-opening, especially for the people that are natural-born citizens in the United States and never had to go through this process. I think you will enjoy this because I think you'll be surprised of how intricate and difficult this process can be. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So step one of becoming a citizen of the United States, and this is actually the hardest one. You have to be in the United States legally to start with. So that is the biggest hurdle, because if you start the process by coming into the United States illegally, it's a wash. There's really very limited chance with the way the current laws are set up as this is being recorded, the 2021-2022 school year. The way the laws are set up right now, if you came into the United States illegally, very little chance, if any, of becoming a citizen in the typical process that we will talk about today. So that is why the Immigration Act of 1990, all right, was really, really important as far as what we're talking about today. So George H.W. Bush is here signing it. Here's the crazy thing about this. Trying to find a picture. Every time a president signs a big law, there's always pictures of him signing it. This is the best picture I could find of him signing the Immigration Act of 1990. All right, with him handing a pen. He's not actually signing it because all the ones of him signing it are really blurry and they're not in good focus. This was like such not a popular, that was unpopular. It's just like nobody cared that this guy got passed in 1990. There apparently wasn't enough photographers here to get a good picture of George H.W. Bush signing this into law, which is crazy because it does affect a ton of people. But it affects immigrants coming in, which I think if you overanalyze it, and I have a tendency to do that, that could be indicative of kind of how America views immigrants in general over, the importance as opposed to something that applies to current citizens doesn't meet the same standard. Anyway, I'm probably overanalyzing that, but the fact that there's not a great picture of this signing and it's him passing a pen off is the best one I could find is crazy. But the Immigration Act of 1990 does do a lot of things. It basically opens the door for a lot more immigrants to come into the United States with green cards and visas. Temporary people that they're staying temporary, or green cards that are staying here for the long term. So it does allow more immigrants to come in. It kind of lays out who gets top priority, because not everybody that wants to come into the United States is allowed. Convicted felons and things like that, you would, America's like, if we have a choice, we're not going to let convicted felons come in. But, people with advanced degrees, people with an extraordinary ability, professors, researchers, extraordinary ability in arts and sciences, those people are given first preference. There's still somewhat of a quota system that we talked about that came up in the 1920s, but it does allow a lot more people to come into the United States. When the Immigration Act of 1990 took place, what it does is it opens up a lot more people to have the ability to get visas and green cards, all right? Which means they are legally allowed to come into the United States, because only after you have a visa and then it needs to be a green card and you're legally in the United States, at that point can you apply to be a citizen of the United States. So that's an important differentiation and clarification here to make. You have to have a green card before you become a citizen. Since the 1990 Immigration Act allowed more people in to legally come in and get green cards, then this is where a lot of the people who are going to be applying for citizenship are coming through that highway that got started with the 1990 Immigration Act through the citizenship process, because they got a green card through the act in 1990. All right, not that it came in 1990. That's just when the law took place. As we just talked about there, what were some of the things that took place? Like, what were some of the changes with immigration that took place with the Immigration Act of 1990, and how it pertains to immigrants? Like who kind of got preferential treatment? How did it treat immigrants as a whole? You can be kind of open-ended with this question, however you want to answer it, but pause me, answer this completely, and we'll move on. So today we're going to talk about completely legal immigration, all right? So people that are here legally with a visa or a green card, all right, are generally referred to as aliens, because aliens just mean foreigners. If you're like, aliens, little green men from outer space, because they would be foreigners to Earth. So alien is just a term that's been used for like alien and sedition acts in the early 1800s with John Adams. And anyway, I'm going too far into U.S. history, but the term alien just means foreigner, right? So here's what legal aliens, people that are in the United States, can do. They can hold jobs, and they're expected to, especially if they want to be a citizen, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. They can own property, they can attend public schools, receive government services, pay taxes, and given protection, the military will protect them just like anybody else. There's some things that you can't do, all right? Of the 21.7 million legal immigrants in the United States, legal aliens, I should say, is they cannot vote, they can't run for office, they can't serve on juries, and they can't hold most government jobs. Legal aliens do not have full rights in the United States. They are here legally because they have a visa or a green card, but they can't do everything. One of the more interesting situations that is required of a legal immigrant is they must have proof that they are a legal immigrant on them at all times. So if they're asked, hey, I need to see proof that you're a legal immigrant, they have to provide that. Which, okay, that seems normal, but it gets touchy in modern society when you have so many people and there's issues with profiling and racism, as we have talked about pretty extensively in this course. Having one group of people that have to show their identification can cause issues, because what do you think happens if that person doesn't have their paperwork? Well, they're probably held till they can find their paperwork, all this other stuff, or there could be consequences that they deal with because of that. And you're like, okay, I understand. Well, just if you were in this situation, we want to make sure you have your paperwork on you. Who gets asked for this? Imagine as a full-on citizen, but whoever's in authority thinks that person's an immigrant and is like, I need to see your papers. Well, if that person is like, no, I'm a natural born citizen. Like I don't have papers. And they're like, prove it. What? And then it can escalate pretty quickly because people are getting profiled just because people think certain people don't have their papers to show it. It seems like it could be an issue, and it has been. It doesn't seem like it. It has been when you require one group of people to show certification and the other ones don't. How do you know one person's not lying? And it can lead to profiling and the other issues that we have seen, especially in urban areas, in which it can negatively impact people of immigrant descent. Because fully legal immigrants do not, meaning citizens, they're in the naturalization process, don't have to have identification. So if they don't have it, what happens? They just get detained until they can prove that that person is a naturalized citizen. Is that, if you're a full citizen, is that acceptable? Anyway, there is some pushback on the concept and the idea that immigrants have to have this paperwork on them at all time and not having a different form of validation. But that is a whole more of a course on ethics as far as the government operates. Anyway, so the question here is, how can requiring some people in America to have identification cards cause tensions between people and authorities? Why do you think it is a requirement? So the end here is, why do you think it's necessary for legal immigrants with visas and green cards to be able to prove that at all times. I think that one's pretty simple to understand. But when only parts of the population have to show identification and other parts don't, what happens when you ask somebody to prove one way or other if they're an immigrant or not that isn't required to show it? Well, then they don't have to show it. Well, then how do you know if somebody is supposed to show it if they're just like, I don't have to show it because I'm a citizen? How do you prove that? And so kind of explain that controversy and how that could lead to some touchy situations between people and people in authority here, and again, when this is being recorded. Because laws change commonly and then I can get outdated real quick. All right, so answer that, we're moving on. As we talk about immigration, and I'm going to go through the process here with you, there's not a real good place to just toss this in, so I'm going to do it right now. Toss it in. That's a little foreshadowing. There's two terms that are used for America because we have a large immigrant population. Basically, we are all immigrants at some point unless you're a Native American. So the term melting pot for America in general has been used for a long time. What that means, and what's supposed to symbolize, is the fact that it's like cheeses. Like everybody's culture from a different country is a cheese. All right, this is not a very good picture because that sure don't look like cheese, does it? But it's simplified, and so you bring in English, French, Vietnamese, Chinese, I don't know, Somali. Everybody's culture. You just bring them together, and then you put them in a pot. And like they're all different cheeses, and you put them in a pot and you melt it, and then you stir it together, and you have like a new cheese. All right, so everything blends together to create a new, unique cheese. That is for a long time, and you do see this a lot in the United States, where everybody's culture kind of merges together to create a new American culture. All right, which you absolutely see that there is a lot of American culture. America does things a certain way. You see a lot of it in our Constitution, what our values are compared to other people's. Absolutely, the melting pot is a legitimate analogy for America's society. What we've seen as historians over time, that might not be the only way of describing America. There is a fancy word called cultural pluralism. It means more than one culture. The better way of explaining it here for cultural pluralism is that America, and it doesn't have to be one or the other, like there's the melting pot theory here, which is what we talked about, where everybody kind of melts together, becomes one unique culture, is the idea of the salad bowl theory. That yes, we're all together, we're all the same meal. Seems weird as I say that out loud, but we still hold our individual parts. So, like lettuce in a salad still remains lettuce, tomato still remains a tomato, cucumber remains a cucumber, salad dressing remains a salad dressing. All of that combined makes the salad, which would, in this theory, make America, but everybody keeps their own individual culture just merged together, and everybody kind of plays off of each other. You'll see this a lot more. Like if you got the big cities, they got Little Italy, Chinatown, Little Havana down in Florida. But you see it more locally. Chinese restaurants, Japanese restaurants, Mexican restaurants. I would imagine if you went to other countries, you're not really going to say, hey, let's go eat American tonight. All right? Unless that's McDonald's. Probably that would be American cuisine. Ooh, that's sad, isn't it? And all these other cultures have these fantastic foods and these recipes. They're like, let's go eat American tonight. Like, nope, I don't want, have a heart attack. But so there's two different theories. There's the salad bowl theory and the melting pot theory. Both of those can work. They're just ideas on how you view society, and there is some legitimacy to both of those. So the question here is, describe how America is both a melting pot and a supporter of cultural pluralism, which is the salad bowl idea. How are they both like that at the same time? So we had talked about that, so pause me, answer that completely, and we'll move it on. Okay, as I have told you, we're going to talk about how you become a citizen of the United States. All right, If you're like, I don't know if I'm a citizen of the United States. If you don't know if you're a citizen of the United States, there's like a 99% chance you are. All right. Or 99.9%, because people that are citizens usually never think about it again. All right. So how do you become a citizen? All right. There's two ways. Number one, you're a native born citizen or you're a naturalized citizen. Here's what that means. All right. Native born means you were born here. And there's a lot of different ways that this can go through. Now, I looked at this graph, and this graph is really good, but if you look at it too, it can almost get confusing. So it's pretty simple. Basically, all right, if you're an alien, all right, and you come here, legal aliens, you're foreign born. You're born into another country to parents that were not citizens of the United States. All right, you have to come do the entire process to become a citizen. All right, so that is the naturalized process, and we'll talk a lot about that. So native born, there's three kinds, and one of them doesn't really apply anymore. There was a large group of naturalized citizens that were actually born here and then had to be naturalized later. Mainly freed slaves after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment. So slaves weren't considered citizens. When the 14th Amendment comes out after the Civil War, after slavery had ended with the 13th Amendment, everybody that was a slave then automatically becomes an official citizen. They don't have to go through a process. They're like, everybody's a citizen that was born here. All right. If you are born here to parents that had gone through the naturalization process, you're automatically a citizen. You don't have to do the same naturalization process your parents did. All right. If you are born here to parents that were born here, you're a citizen, and that is probably what most people in America. That's not probably that is what most people in America are, or people that are born here to people that were also born here, and so the complete opposite. You've never thought about this whole process. There's also one other caveat. Say your parents were on vacation in, I don't know, Germany. Your parents were on vacation in Germany or India or New Zealand when they were pregnant with you, and then you were born in another country. Since your parents are American citizens, you are also an American citizen, unless they have given up their citizenship to America, which we'll talk about that here in a second. So it's not like you can't go on vacation, be born somewhere else, and then you have to go through the naturalization process. So the question here is, and think about, I mentioned this, so think about this question. Why do you think many citizens, most Americans, know so little about what it takes to become a citizen of the United States? Why do you think that is? And we're going to talk about but most people have no idea what the process to actually becoming a citizen is. And why do you think that is? So pause me, answer that completely, and we're going to start walking through this process. All right. So this is going to be the naturalization process. Step one, if you're an immigrant wanting to become a citizen of the United States, you have to be here legally to begin with. That's the big caveat. Your first step, you have a visa, you have a green card, something, the Immigration Act of 1990 probably helped you out. The first thing you have to do, so you're already here, you're here legally, and you're like, you know what? I would like to not only permanently stay here, which a green card could do, all right? I would like to be an official citizen of the United States. What you would do is you would sign a declaration of intent. You would sign up with the United States Citizen Immigration Services, the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and let them know, I'm ready for this process to get started to become a citizen. All right. There are requirements to be here, and you kind of know this in advance. You have to have jobs. You can't have felonies. You can't be arrested. Like, there's all these rules that you have to make sure you live by. And you have to stay here for 5 years. All right, this isn't a quick process. You have to live here for 5 years, following all the rules that are put onto you to make sure that you're not doing anything illegal. All right, so 5 years, don't break any laws, be a model citizen, even though you're technically not a citizen at the time. The next step is you have to go interview in like a government office, all right? And you have to sit down with them and basically prove that all these requirements have been met. One of the, and this is, now, I guess it depends on the economy. You have to have employment, all right, in order to become a citizen. You have to show that you're an effective member of society. Well, sometimes untrustworthy employers will hire a immigrant, all right, and try to not pay taxes on them, so hire them illegally, just pay them in cash, which would be less than they would normally pay them, so they don't have to pay tax, don't have to pay health care benefits. That is illegal employment, and it can actually prevent the immigrant from becoming a citizen. So there's all these rules that, you know, normal Americans could get caught up on, but imagine somebody trying to navigate these touchy little things that could like derail your entire life plan because somebody else is dishonest and you don't know the individual things you have to do. Also, even though America does not have an official language, you have to do all this in English. So even though America doesn't have an official language, to become a citizen, you have to prove that you are proficient in English in order to become a citizen of the United States. All right, so you make it through the interview, and looking this up, there are tons of like people are terrified about this. Like, just as should I bring an attorney with me? Like, it is a very stressful situation because if they say no, I mean, it's not like you go to the back of the line. It's just like a no. And from what I can tell, once they kick you out of this program, because so many people want to go through it and they're kind of selective as it is, you may never get back into this program to start the process over again. So people are very stressed about this because once you get your citizenship, you're done. You don't have to think about it again. But the process is pretty intense. So step 3, you have to have this interview. Step 4, you have to take a citizenship test, which is in English. All right, and you have to talk about the U.S. flag, about U.S. history, about the U.S. Constitution, questions about the U.S. courts. Basically, all the stuff, if you have me as a teacher and you're in my class, all the stuff that we learn about, they're going to expect you to know, like from all your history classes and civics classes. A lot of it's more current events, like who's the current representative, who's your stuff that the vast majority of Americans don't know. A positive to this, there's a 91% national pass rate of this test. Whew, it must be easy. It's not. It's not easy. But when you know your entire future of your life of what you want rides on passing a test, people tend to study for it. In Vietnam, and I know this because I went to East Carolina long after Vietnam, but I went to East Carolina University. I graduated there in the early 2000s. And I remember a professor there who had taught there since the Vietnam War talked about during Vietnam, one of the requirements to avoid the draft is not only did you have to be enrolled in college, you had to have over a 3.0 in college to not get drafted. And they said test scores skyrocketed in college across the entire board in every department, basically because people were so terrified of being drafted that people really worked a lot harder on education because they realized how pivotally it could change their entire life if they didn't do well in academics. This is why you're going to see a 91% pass rate. Is because people take this very seriously, and it is a very intense test, but people typically do well on it because it's just like, driving tests aren't easy. Your driver's ed stuff is easy, but most people pass that because they're really focused on making sure they do well. Once you pass this test and you pass your interviews and everything else, you then have to take an oath. You can't have you can't be a citizen of another country. If you are a citizen of another country, which you would have been, you have to give that up. And then you become a citizen of the United States and you take an oath of loyalty to the United States above all others. Something that is not required of people that were born here, that is just expected of them. That, of course, you would, put America above everybody else. But if you're an immigrant and you become a naturalized citizen, this is what you have to do. And once you become a citizen, more or less, that's over. There's no reevaluation. Once you're a citizen, your children will then be citizens. So the question here is, which part of this process do you think would be the most difficult if you were having to go through it? All right. And explain your answer. So for you personally, what part of this process do you think would be the most difficult and why? All right, so pause me, answer that, and we're going to move on. All right. Losing citizenship. This is rare, all right? So losing your citizenship, once you're a citizen of the United States, you're a citizen forever unless you lose your citizenship. And there's a couple ways that this can happen. And they're all very rare. This almost never happens. But of the cases that do happen, the most common one is through denaturalization. People who went all the way through and became a citizen of the United States, high fives all around. Then the government says, wait a minute, no, and they take the citizenship back from them. This is almost exclusively when people are lying through the whole process. They pretend to be somebody else, or they've lied about it, and they realize the person that became a citizen is actually a fake person. Like, it's a real human being, but they've pretended to be somebody else the whole time. If you get caught lying in the naturalization process, even after you're a citizen, they can take that citizenship from. That's the most common way of being denaturalization. Another concept is expatriation. This means you have to give up your citizenship to another country. If you leave America and go become a citizen in another country, depending on what their laws are, some places will let you have dual citizenship. The United States won't if you come here. That you may have to give up your citizenship in order to live in another country, but that's based on their immigration laws. Really, the only way a natural-born citizen could lose their citizenship is really like treason. Like you're selling nuclear secrets to an enemy, or like something crazy like that. That is wildly rare, and I cannot think of an example off the top of my head. I'm sure I could Google it, but off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with an example of when that has happened. So the question is, why do you think the United States would take someone's citizenship if they were caught lying during the naturalization process? So answer that completely, and that's what I got for you guys today. Hope you liked it. See y'all tomorrow.